This is going to be a really quick look at anaerobic and aerobic training and their benefits. So generally when we think about aerobic and anaerobic training, we think about it specific for the event, and that's really important. But it's also important to know that training the aerobic system is going to have a benefit for anaerobic events, and likewise training the anaerobic systems, we're going to have a benefit for events that are predominantly aerobic. So what I've got there is I've got the different benefits for each of them. Let's break each of those down in the next couple of slides and have a look at it, and then we'll look at an applied question. So firstly, when we're talking about specificity for the aerobic system, when we train the aerobic system, we're going to have a more efficient system. It's going to be able to produce energy at a faster rate. So glycogen's going to be broken down faster, triglyceride's going to be able to be broken down faster. We produce energy faster aerobically, which means we're going to be able to work at a higher intensity aerobically for longer. So that concept of efficiency is really important, because what that means is that it will delay our lactate inflection point. We'll be able to hold a higher intensity for longer aerobically due to the efficiency of the system. With our anaerobic systems, we're making that more efficient as well. We're making that produce energy faster, and that's going to assist in a force production and greater power output for specifically those events. So for short duration, high intensity efforts. So by now you should be feeling pretty comfortable with those sorts of adaptations, that you get out what you put in. They're specific to the events that you're training for and specific to the training that you're undertaking. However, what we want to think about as well is we want to think about a strong aerobic system. Yes, it definitely helps with aerobic type work, but because the aerobic system recovers PC or CP, and because the aerobic system removes the metabolic byproducts, it's really important to have a strong aerobic base for those sorts of sports that are considered perhaps a little bit more anaerobic. Because of just that, the aerobic system assists in the recovery of PC or the replenishment of PC during a passive recovery, and also it helps remove metabolic byproducts, particularly hydrogen, during those higher intensity efforts. Now, having a strong anaerobic system for aerobic based events are important as well, because there's always going to be a period of time, whether it be in a marathon or whether it be a soccer match or something that's intermittent, there's going to be a period of time where the aerobic system isn't able to 100% meet the needs of that task. It might be just at the start of a race or at the end of a race perhaps. So it's important that we have a look that the anaerobic systems assist in that faster rate of energy production during periods of higher intensity. So when the aerobic system is not able to fully meet the needs of the task or fully meet the energy requirements of the task, and the anaerobic systems either dominate or increase their contribution to meet the demand, then having that strong anaerobic system is going to be really advantageous for that aerobic based athlete, so that they can produce energy at that fast rate. And that can potentially be a game winner, or it can potentially have a big effect if someone can hold a higher intensity just at that end part of a race, or perhaps in soccer, undertake a fast sprint. So the type of training that we mean for aerobic, we mean continuous training, fartlek training. Now, fartlek training involves periods of work where the anaerobic systems increase their contribution during those higher intensity efforts, but it's predominantly aerobic, long interval and circuit. Anaerobic, we've got intermediate, spelled correctly there, interval, short interval, speed, and then circuit as well. You'll note that circuit's there for both of them because you can manipulate different stations to address different fitness components and different energy systems. So let's have a little bit of a look at just one of the questions. So listed in the table below are individual Australian track cycling records. So we've got a 500 metre time trial and we've got a 3,000 metre individual pursuit. And by looking at the records there, you should be thinking already about the dominant energy system. So 33 point, that's very specific, isn't it? 381 and 3 minutes, 27.650 seconds. The predominant energy system used in each of the following events. So the 500 metre time trial, we'll know that that's the anaerobic glycolysis system, and the 3,000 metre individual pursuit is obviously going to be the aerobic system with a duration over 3 minutes. So training their anaerobic capacity will be beneficial to both the 3,000 metre pursuit cyclists and the 500 metre time trialists. Explain why this is the case. So this here, we're talking about why anaerobic systems are important for an aerobic event. So the first one's, let's talk about the 500 metre to start with, because that's an easy one. So 500 metres, the dominant energy system is the anaerobic glycolysis system. So having a strong anaerobic glycolysis system is going to be vital because it's specific to the energy system requirement for the sport, and it's it's going to allow the athlete to produce energy at a faster rate anaerobically. However, with a 3,000 metre pursuit cyclist, it's also going to be important because there's going to be periods of time where the anaerobic system's either going to dominate or increase their contribution, particularly at the start and at the end as well. So training anaerobic capacity will allow the 300 metre pursuit cyclist to have a greater production of energy anaerobically, which is going to increase force output, power output, force production, and therefore increase the intensity with which they can work, or the pace with which they can work. Let's have a look and see what the state said. So it was out of 5 marks and 6% of the state got 0. So we're looking at most of the state getting around 2 to 3%, so about 60% of the state. And they probably got the marks in those first 2 questions, in the 500 metre or the 3,000. Anaerobic glycolysis and aerobic system. Let's have a look at, I'll read it out and then we'll go through it. So while the 500 metre event is predominantly anaerobic, so therefore training it is going to be specific, the 3,000 metre event would rely heavily on the energy contribution from the anaerobic systems, and then particularly at the start and at the sprint. The capacity of the anaerobic systems is finite, but if the athlete can increase this capacity, they're able to derive more energy from these systems, which allows a higher rate of energy production. So it's important here, they've said, yes, it allows a higher rate of energy production, and this allows the cyclist to go faster in both events. So that concept of increased power output and therefore increased intensity or increased pace is really important. You don't just want to talk about what's happening physiologically, but you want to talk about what you're seeing, the outcome, and that's that they're going faster. Anaerobic capacity training increases lactate tolerance, allowing the athlete to work at maximal intensities for longer periods. And let's have a look at what the examiners said as well. The question was challenging for students. Many students discussed aerobic benefits to training, even though the question clearly stated anaerobic. Students were unable to make the link between increased anaerobic capacity and being able to sustain high intensities due to increased tolerance to the accumulated lactate. So that's a really important one there. Students continue to confuse tolerance with lactate inflection point and do not understand that an increase in LIP is an aerobic adaptation and increased tolerance to lactate is an anaerobic adaptation. Now, I've made an entire slideshow and presentation on the difference between lactate inflection point and lactate tolerance. So maybe now's a good time, if you haven't already, to go back and have a look at that one. But these questions come up constantly, this anaerobic and aerobic playoff. So make sure that you understand and that you're able to answer those sorts of questions. Okay, hope